Good evening, everybody. Nice to be in Houston tonight. Nobody stopped me at the line, so I kept on coming. And as Marjorie said, I have LSU and Mississippi State in me, so, I got a lot of purple and gold in me, so forgive me for that. Okay. But I know there's LSU Tigers over here somewhere, too. But we're going to take on the exciting topic tonight of garden safety and bugs, and we're going to have some black spot information that Dr. Mark Wyndham at the University of Tennessee provided to me. So we've only got about 3 hours of information, so y'all just sit back and relax and order some pizza and we'll be in good shape.
And a beer.
But I'm working now as a horticulturalist at Bracey's Nursery in Amite, Louisiana, as a horticulturalist at Clegg's Nursery in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I do their education and social media and outreach and newsletters and all that kind of thing. And I'm also serving with the American Rose Society as the Region 7 director. So we appreciate everything that the Houston Rose Society does. Thank y'all. Okay, you all know what our major pest categories are: weeds and insects and diseases. So, and I know most of y'all have no issues with weeds or insects or diseases. So, but really, seriously, y'all, from Houston to Tallahassee, this is the insect and weed major zone of the United States of America. We have more weeds and more insects than most of the United States does. So, of course, when you go from the weeds, now on the insect pests, on your weeds, of course, there's annual weeds and perennial weeds, there's grassy weeds, there's broadleaf weeds, and there is sedges. When the warm season weeds start germinating? What day? What month? Warm season weed seed, when do they start germinating?
February 1st.
February 5th to February 15th. Okay? And when do they die out? October, November. So we have about 8 or 9 months of warm season weeds. When do cool season weed seed germinate? Starting September 10th to 15th, right now. Believe it or not, even though it's 95 degrees outside. And when do they last till? They last till May or June. So we've got 8 or 9 months of warm season weeds, and we got 8 or 9 months of cool season weeds. Okay? So no wonder we have issues.
We're so blessed.
Keep in mind on our insects and our spider mites, many times we have more beneficial insects than we have harmful insects. So make sure we know how to properly identify what insect pests we have. And then you also have your pill bugs and your snails and your slugs, and it seems like we have a lot of snail and slug issues down here. Sluggo and diatomaceous earth and some of those kind of products do a pretty good job on your snails and on your slugs. Keep in mind on your spider mites, most insecticides are not going to kill spider mites. You need a miticide to kill mites. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, and then you have these, which we really don't talk about a whole lot: your birds and your snakes and your fish and your rodents and your armadillos and those kind of plants, those kind of animals that are varmints in the landscape, and they can dig up your plants and cause issues. And then, of course, the one that we could spend hours talking about is the plant diseases. And fungus, of course, is your major plant disease, but you also have viruses, and you have other plants, other issues. And a lot of times these are caused maybe by the environmental conditions being correct. You have to have your disease organism there. You've got to have a susceptible host plant there, and then you have to have the right environmental conditions for those pathogens to start reproducing and be a problem on your plant. So And sometimes of the year, black spot may be worse, and sometimes of the year, black spot may not be so bad. We have a lot of Cercospora leaf spot on our ornamental plants down here in the Gulf Coast area, whereas Cercospora leaf spot is not as bad of a fungus in other parts of the country like it is down here. So we need to kind of diagnose and know what we have. And then, of course, sometimes you may get things like cold damage and heat damage and air pollution and dog urine being a cause of a plant disease, but that's non-pathological. So on your diseases, you have pathological and then you have non-pathological. Of course, always identify the pest before we start corrective action. So most of us as rose growers, we probably know what time of year aphids are going to start, and we know what time of year chili thrips are going to start, and we typically can be aware of that. We know when spider mites usually are going to be the worst based on time of year and when environmental conditions are going on. But 99% of insects are beneficial and 1% of insects are harmful. So we have a whole lot more beneficial insects than we have harmful insects. If you have aphids, you really don't want to be spraying 7 carbaryl, you don't want to spray that. If you have aphids and you're trying to kill them, you don't want to spray spinosad. Spinosad and carbaryl both will kill beneficials at a very high rate, and that makes your aphid population go up because you're knocking out all the good insects that are killing your bad aphids. So some other products would be a better job for aphids than spinosad or 7 would. Now, a recent study came out. You know, your neighbor is only 3% accurate with horticulture information. And this can be documented every day on Facebook. A gardening question goes up and there's 30 replies. And you know how many answers are right? Maybe 1 or 2, okay? So, you know, now, sometimes your neighbors are very knowledgeable, but the average person these days does not know that much about horticulture or about the problem-solving part of horticulture, or when to prune this, or how to take care of this weed, or what this insecticide does or this herbicide does. So make sure you're getting information that's accurate, consulting rosarians, going to continuing education classes, etc. And the things that y'all do by having plant clinics and information tables at garden centers and at meetings and open houses and events like that educates the public on those kind of things. Okay, so there are ways that we can control our pests, we can control our weeds and our insects and our diseases. You know, biological control, we can mechanically prune out dead wood, we can mechanically hoe out a weed. We can use cultural practices, doing the right things at the right time of year to offset some of the problems that we have in the landscape. And you know, there are some plants now that are more genetically resistant or less susceptible to certain pests or certain diseases. So, and we certainly have roses that are like that don't get as much black spot or Cercospora as other roses do. You know, there's crepe myrtle varieties that don't get as much disease as other crepe myrtle varieties. There's vinca or periwinkle varieties that die faster than other vincas or periwinkle varieties. So knowing the right variety for the right situation is important. And then we need to be careful about transferring plant material across state lines now. You know, there's a lot of Department of Agriculture regulations about moving citrus now. And we need to be aware of rose rosette when we go to other parts of the country and don't bring rose rosette back with us. And so there's those kind of issues that have to be done. Ricky Becknell, he owns Becknell & Son Citrus Nursery in Belle Chase, Louisiana, but he had to open him an operation here in Orange, Texas to grow citrus for his Texas market because Louisiana cannot send citrus trees to Texas. because of citrus greening and citrus canker and other diseases on citrus. So that's how industry had to change, and one businessman had to take a new approach to continue business that he was doing. Okay, definition of pesticide. I know this is not exciting stuff for most of y'all, but this is things that we need to know. And y'all are very aware probably of these products, fungicides and herbicides and insecticides and miticides and rodenticides and nematicides. So that's kind of your umbrella of pesticides that we may use out there in the landscape. And there's some of these that are organic, not very many organic, but there are some organic options on the insecticides and the herbicides and the fungicides. Okay, so of course a pesticide is any material to kill, attract, repel, or regulate pests. And so those are what the different categories of a pesticide may be. Usually they're going to be effective and fast and easy if you follow the label recommendations.
What's the pesticide?
I'm sorry?
What's that next to the last one there? Step back up.
I figured you were going to ask me that.
It's
Just
It's on the tip of my tongue. Do you know, Baxter?
No.
I know, but I forgot.
Fish killer.
Is that fish? Is that fish? Could be fish? I don't know. I don't think it's fish.
Well, that's when you feed on your plants.
Pesticides. I don't know. Okay, the important thing, how does a pesticide work? Systemic or contact? And this could be a fungicide or an insecticide or a herbicide. A systemic herbicide is going to kill the above ground part of the plant and also the roots. It's going to be translocated within the plant. Whereas a contact herbicide is just going to kill the part of that plant that that herbicide touches. Okay, so insecticide, same thing. And a systemic insecticide like imidacloprid is translocated throughout the whole plant when you apply it. But a contact insecticide, which a lot of the organic kind of ones are, like horticultural oil, neem oil, spinosad, those just kill the pests that the spray contacts. And then fungicides are the same way. You know, we have fungicides for black spot that are for contact kill, like mancozeb, and we have fungicides for black spot that are systemic kill, like propiconazole and some of the other conazole kind of products. And then, of course, you have selective and non-selective. So some herbicides kill every weed. Some herbicides just kill grassy weeds. Some herbicides just kill sedges. Some herbicides just kill broadleaves. Glyphosate kills everything. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then, of course, residual activity in the garden or in the landscape. The tendency now is to have less residual in the landscape, so the pesticide does not last in the landscape as long after it's applied. So used to, when you applied a pesticide, it probably lasted for a couple of weeks. Now it lasts a couple of days. There are some of those residual pesticides that you see used along railroad tracks and utility yards and those kind of things. Are basically sterilants, and they kill everything there for up to 6 months or so. And you have to be licensed, and you've got to know what you're doing in order to be able to apply those products and to buy those products. So sometimes now, because there's not this residual effect, we may need to apply some of these a little bit more often to control a major population. So we really need to stay on top of our insect pests early. Don't let the population explode. Like right now, if you have white flies or you have scale and it's been out there since March or April, your population is very, very high. When you start seeing sooty mold on your crepe myrtles and sooty mold on your gardenias, those insects have been out there working your plants for 2, 3, 4 months. So, when the populations build up. And, some insecticides only kill the insect when it's in the adult stage. So, you may have to spray 3 or 4 times, 5 to 7 days apart to knock out one generation of a certain insect pest. Y'all know how many whiteflies, if you put a boy and a girl in the greenhouse on January 1st, and how many whiteflies there are on December 31st if you don't control them? Millions and maybe billions. I have no idea. You probably couldn't breathe. There'd be a white cloud in there. Okay, so the thing we need to be doing now is sustainability, integrated pest management. Take all of these practices together. Don't just be relying on pesticide. Monitor your garden, scout your plants, do beneficial insects, do trapping. You can get these yellow sticky cards and you can kind of hang them out in your garden and kind of get your insects to kind of stick on those yellow traps and kind of do a weekly survey of what's going on in the insect populations in your garden. And that's a good way to tell what's going on. You may not see that initial flower thrip on your rose, but if you have those yellow sticky traps out there in the garden, you may be able to see some insect activity before you notice it on your plants and try to catch it a little bit earlier. If your neighbor has a lot of weeds, they're going to have thrips on those weeds, and those thrips are going to move to your roses.
You said yellow sticky traps. Are those things we put in the garden to collect insects? Or?
Right, it's like a postcard. It's like a postcard, and it's kind of got it's yellow usually, and it's got some sticky substance on it. And when the insects fly around, they're attracted to that yellow, and they get stuck on the card. And then if you know what you're looking at, you can go out there and see if you have insects or don't have insects. Or it's used a lot in greenhouse operations. So be aware of what your neighbor's doing. If you have a lot of weeds in one part of your property on your neighbor's property, that could be a source of inoculating your landscape. If you're not monitoring your plants, you're not inspecting your plants, you're not doing IPM. If you're spraying on a schedule, you're not doing IPM. We want to only be spraying when we need to spray. Okay, considerations for pesticide use. Of course, identify your pest. Is this an old infestation or a new infestation? Is the pest damage visible, but maybe the pest is no longer there? Or if you see a lot of lady beetles out there, but you don't see the aphids, maybe the lady beetles have taken advantage of the aphid population and knocked the aphid population down enough that you don't need to be spraying. So you need to kind of watch those kind of things. Resistant pest populations, we're seeing more and more of this kind of thing. So, like in agronomic crops, pigweed, y'all know what pigweed is? Pigweed is becoming resistant to herbicides. Some races of black spot are becoming resistant to fungicides. Some species of whiteflies are becoming resistant to insecticides. If you spray spinosad all the time for your thrips become resistant to spinosad. You've got to rotate, modes of action and rotate different products out there to control these insects. And then we may talk about this later, but of course, application rate, timing, every 7 to 10 days, every 14 days. What does the label say? It's going to give you a low rate and a high rate. Your low rate is if you're trying to prevent a problem or you have a low population of a pest. Your high rate is if you have a high population of the pest and you're trying to do a pretty fast kill. So you need to kind of adjust your application rate based on what your pest pressure is at the current time. Okay, so the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. So anyway, all these pesticides are regulated nationally and on the state level. Of course, in Texas, y'all are regulated by the Texas Department of Agriculture. And a retail garden center or a feed store that sells pesticides, all that has to be done according to state regulations. Depending on what you do with your pesticides, you may need a private applicator's license or you may need a commercial applicator license. There's a lot more regulation to this than what you used to be. And in some situations, you're supposed to be keeping a data sheet or a log of when you applied and what the temperature was and how much product you put out and what the wind condition was and what plants that pesticide was applied to. So that doesn't apply in a home gardener situation, but it does apply for the guys who maintain landscapes commercially. It applies for the nursery growers. It applies for the agronomic farmers. It applies for the vegetable growers. So if you're in commercial production, you've got to do all that. Okay, labels and labeling. The label is the law. Of course, we all know that. We're supposed to keep our labels with the container. How often do we misplace our labels? I can't even read the labels anymore. They're so small print.
Amen.
But at least keep your labels in a book near where your pesticides are. And it's going to give you a lot of information. The labels have gotten a lot more detailed than what they used to be. A lot more information there. So just be aware of that. And we're violating federal law if we don't do what we're supposed to do. So I have no idea how much pesticide is misused, but there's probably a decent amount out there.
Do you know of anyone who got sued by the state for doing that?
I know in Louisiana several people have gotten in big time trouble. Yes. And it's serious. It's not a little slap on the hand. They bring you in and work you over good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you said we should put our labels in a book near the pesticide.
Yeah, and I also said to keep it on the bottle too, didn't I? I think keep it in a binder, keep it in a file, keep it so where you know where it is. Yeah. How many times we put something out without reading the directions? I hate reading directions. All this stuff you get at Christmas time, and you have to put it together. My brother's an engineer. He loves reading all those directions, putting all that stuff together. I dump all the parts out and try to do it myself, and it never works out. Okay, so what is the label going to tell you as far as directions? How you're going to mix it up, what conditions environmentally can you apply these products at, what plants you can apply that product on, what diseases or insects or weeds it's going to control. So all that's going to be on there. Phytotoxicity. I imagine some of us have burned some ornamental plants or burned some roses by putting out the wrong product at the wrong time at the high rate when it's 95 degrees or something like that. So we need to be careful. Of course, all the agronomic guys, they have to attend classes on pesticide drift, but we have drift in the home landscape also. So that can definitely occur. Now, once in a while, it's not on the homeowner products, but on the commercial products, it's going to have a reentry time. Like if you spray a product in a greenhouse or in a field, it's going to say 12 hours or 24 hours or 48 hours before you can re-enter that area after you spray. So there are some regulations now about re-entry time on some of the chemical pesticides that we use. Okay, the site must be stated on the label. the target pest does not necessarily need to be on the label. It may say beetles, but it may not say all the different types of beetles, or it may say for general purpose insect control. So there's a little bit of leeway there. Any application method may be used unless it's prohibited on the label. So if you're not supposed to, tank mix this product, or you're like mixing insecticide with a fungicide together, that's what we say on the label. Don't do that. So keep that in mind. And you can still use applications may be made at a rate less than that stated on the label, not more. So, I've done this before. I've accidentally, of course, mixed it up higher than what I was supposed to on a concentration. I know nobody would ever do that. But we're supposed to use the 1x rate. We're not supposed to use the 2x rate or the 3x rate. We've got to use the 1x rate, recommended rate, or a lower rate than that. So don't be mixing it up at 2 ounces per gallon if it says 1 ounces per gallon. How long do insecticides and fungicides and herbicides last in storage after you open them? You're supposed to keep them in a cool, dry place, away from sun. You don't want sun exposure. Usually your insecticides are good for 1 to 2 years. Your fungicides a little bit longer than that. And your herbicides probably 3 years or so, depending on what your product is. But you are going to lose some effectiveness after you open the product after a year or so. And here's what a typical pesticide label has on it. Directions for use, first aid, that's very important nowadays. It tells you the active ingredient. It tells you the other or the inert ingredients in there. It's going to give you the manufacturer information, the EPA numbers, how you're supposed to store and dispose of this material. Pesticide disposal days or pesticide collection days are not held nearly as much as they used to be held. So in Louisiana and in Texas, it's harder to find, the Department of Agriculture having a collection day for all these old pesticides. But if you do see the opportunity to go to one of those and turn in some of your products that are 3 to 5 years old that you aren't using anymore, try to do that. And some of the days that collect, paint and things like that, and household things don't take pesticides, so you got to be aware of that. And then there's going to be signal words on there: caution, warning, danger. We'll talk about that, I believe, here in a minute. Okay, so that's what's on the label, brand name, and the main thing is we need to know what these common names and chemical names are of the product, because we can have 5 brand names out there, trade names, but they may all have the same chemical in that container. So we got to look down there where it says the chemical name or the common name of the product in that container. Okay, and then the active ingredient, and on your active ingredient on your products, you may have 3 or 4 different concentrations out there. There may be a homeowner brand that has this percentage of this active ingredient, while the commercial brand has this percentage of active ingredient. Or maybe the agronomic formulation has 1% active ingredient, where the horticulture form of it has another % active ingredient, and the horticulture form is always going to be much more expensive than the agronomic form is. So you've got those kind of things. It's the same product, just different % active ingredients.
What's the difference between those two?
Okay, so an inert ingredient is just a filler material. So so like on one of the common 7s is carbaryl, 20%. So it's got 20% carbaryl in it. And the other 80% is just filler material. Inert material is what we call it. The common name on this one is chlorothalonil. And this one is turf care, turf and ornamental fungicide, but there's probably at least 10 or 15 products at the garden center that could be sold out there that have chlorothalonil as the active ingredient. And you can see this one has like 82% of tetrachlorocyclophenolnitril in it, okay? And some other chlorothalonils may be down to 30–40%. So that's, we got to keep that in mind. And then the technical name right there. Common name, chemical name. Okay, now there's this issue right here, LD50, lethal dose 50. Lethal dose 50. You can't find this on a lot of the products that we use. Lethal dose, that's milligrams per kilogram, oral or dermal, or inhaling, okay? The more toxic the product, the lower the LD50 is. Okay? So a little bit will do more harm on some of these. Okay, so here's some examples of LD50s for some products that you all are familiar with. Nail polish, nicotine, caffeine, ibuprofen, aspirin. So all of these, we don't think of, these are just products that we use every day. They have an LD50 just like pesticides do. So, things under our kitchen sink that we use to clean our house, all those have an LD50. So it just makes you think about some of this. I see a few people writing a few things down, so.
Well, the aspartame is the artificial sweetener.
Right.
But notice how big the number is, which means
So,
it's not hardly
right.
a problem at all.
Exactly. And when you get up here, you're not really looking at a problem. I mean, that's milligrams per kilogram. That's, that's not possible to ingest or take that in,
But you would only have to take 1/1000th the amount of nail polish remover,
Right.
just hit and die from it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that 50 is 50% of the people that are taking the die.
That, right, 50%, lethal dose 50. Well, laboratory animals. Yeah. Poor rats, I tell you. Okay, now here's the stuff, I've used Timic before. Back in graduate school, all the graduate students, we had to use Timic in our floriculture media when we did poinsettias and mums, That's scary stuff right there, okay? Carbaryl 7, that's a pretty low LD50. Triclopure, we know triclopure, that's a herbicide. That's that tough one that kills your woody shrubs, kills pecan tree and oak seedlings, kills tallow trees. Y'all know about tallow trees? Glyphosate, you see, now we're all worried about glyphosate, but glyphosate has a much bigger LD50 than some of these other products that we use a lot more regularly. So, I'm not going to say one of these is good or one of these is bad, but let's just educate ourselves on which ones cause the most problems or which ones are kind of dangerous to use, and you can't get Timic anymore. So, glyphosate is Roundup, yes. Okay, and there's your signal words, and very seldomly now do you see poison written. This is only on those, soil sterilant kind of products. We don't see that in our average horticulture gardening use. Most of what we use is down here in the caution. Once in a while we may find a warning label, but most of the time what we're using these days has caution labels on it. Okay, what was I going to show here? So these are both mosquito products, okay?
Excuse me, it said understand signal words, and I don't.
Okay, signal words, okay. So your signal words are caution, warning, danger, and then there's another one called danger poison that has the skull and crossbones on it. So caution is only slightly toxic, warning is moderately toxic, and danger, we need to stay away from using all these products. Severe eye damage, skin irritation, highly toxic. The old burn down herbicides that we used to see with high active ingredient percentages like paraquat. You know, paraquat's still out there, but the old paraquat was right in here somewhere. Okay, so these are basically DEET products, you know, but see, one of them is, okay, I thought that had caution on it. Maybe it doesn't. There it is, caution right there. And this is warning. Y'all see good. Caution, warning. So that's 23%, but this is 25%. So going from 23 to 25 took it from caution to warning. Okay? So some things that we don't really think about being something we ought to be thinking about makes us think about it, you know?
So does that mean we should be?
Well, it just means that we need to educate ourselves, and I think if most people do this, they would use the caution instead of the warning. You know, there's only 2% where well, this has like, you know.
That goes on.
Yeah, yes, yeah, DEET's in a lot of products, yes.
That's what that is, right?
Yeah, right.
Both of those products you got to spray over your legs and arms.
Right, yeah. Okay, so we can take in products orally through our mouth, dermal through our skin. We don't think about our skin a whole lot when we're out there. You know, we may think about sun and sunburn and skin cancer, but do we think about protecting ourselves when we spray pesticide? You know, inhaling, breathing, and then in your eyes. So there's all these different ways that different products, no matter what we're using, can, you know, get on us. And absorption through the skin is the most common route. Okay, so when you're feeling bad and you sprayed a pesticide, you know it may be hot, you may be dehydrated, you may be not feeling good, you may have mixed up a product more than you needed, you may have some drift going on, you know. This is all kind of heat stroke related kind of things too. Headache, giddiness. Some people are giddy all the time though, so nausea, chest pains, blurred vision. So just be aware when you're out there in the garden of these kind of things. My dad, when he was in graduate school at Mississippi State, he worked in cotton. Now this was in the 1960s, okay? He was one of the flaggers in the field. You know, when the crop dusters fly over, the students are out there with flags showing them what rows they had flown over and then move them over to the next row. You know, so that's the kind of things that used to be done, you know. Yeah, yes, right. Okay, personal protection of equipment, PPE, you know. Whether it be rubber boots or goggles or a hat, all these kind of things, and the label is going to tell you what you should be wearing when you spray these pesticides. You want to protect, you know, wear long sleeves, watch your skin, this kind of thing. And some products you don't need to worry so much about, or there's very little protection that's recommended, but other products there's a good bit of protection that's recommended. And we always want to wash up good after we use a pesticide, and this applies to the organic products too. Your organic products can, you know, have some harm, so I don't want to alarm anybody, but we need to be safe with those too. Read the label, keep a change of clothes nearby, keep soap handy. Make sure you have a water source if you need to rinse off, if you actually spill a little bit of pesticide on you. You know, when you're using a backpack sprayer, how many of us have a backpack sprayer or have used a backpack sprayer when it's leaking? Okay, so we need to keep all that taken care of. So just a few words of caution. And these are the formulations of pesticides that are on the market now. So, you know, wettable powders used to be a big thing, emulsifiable concentrates, you know, 7 dust, fumigants. There aren't that many fumigants anymore, but you may fumigate for fleas in your house in some situations now. All this micro-encapsulated stuff is more available than what it used to be.
What is invert emulsion?
Invert emulsion. I figured you were going to ask that too. Invert emulsion. I'm not sure. Does anybody know exactly what invert emulsion is? And there's some recommendations that say mix this up in warm water, you know. Sometimes it says put like half of your water in your tank and put the product in, and then put the rest of your water in the tank. Sometimes it says something about agitating. They need to agitate this product, so that needs to be thought about. Okay, and then of course general use or restricted use, and most of the products we're using now are not restricted. General use products, normal, lower toxicity, these are the ones that you can go and buy easily. Restricted use products, you need a license, certification to order to use these and buy these, and those are usually going to be more commercial products than they are consumer products.
According to Google, an emulsion in which oil is the continuous or external phase and water is the internal phase. Invert emulsion usually refers to an oil-based mud, and the terms are considered synonymous. Invert emulsion muds can be run with 5 to 50% water in the liquid phase, although their systems are 100% oil. It's generally used in oil fields.
It's like suspending with surfactant.
So suspending with a surfactant. Okay. Thank you all. Okay, so how do pesticides move in the environment, in the air, and the water? Drifting, you know, we have a lot of situations in agronomic production areas in Louisiana where there's drift on people's ornamental landscapes. If you have a residence that's landscaped, you know, in the middle of cotton country or something, you may get some spray drift out there. It's not right, but it does happen, and you can contact your Department of Agriculture, and they send an inspector out there, and that can be reported, and that can be brought back on the pesticide applicator in some situations. Okay, like a pesticide movement, but you know, residue on plants and animals, but also how do a lot of insect pests spread? They spread in wind and they spread in water, so not only pesticides can move like this, but your pests can move like this. You know, I'm not sure how much you all have a crepe myrtle bark scale in Houston yet, but crepe myrtle bark scale has taken over Dallas and is in College Station now, and that scale is moved by birds. You know, birds moving your scale insects from tree to tree. So we need to be thinking about that. Of course, we're all into the pollinator thing now, and that's very important. We need to do what we can to protect our pollinator populations. So, time of day we spray, etc. Know what the beneficial insects are. So, like on lace bugs versus lace wings. Lace bugs are harmful. Lace wings are beneficial. I was trying to give you a couple other examples there. but there are way more beneficial insects than we realize.
How do you tell the difference between lace bugs and lace wings?
Okay, lace bugs feed on azaleas and sycamores and lantanas and pyracanthum. And they are a lacy-winged insect that feeds on the foliage underneath the plants, on the underside of the plants. So like if you have kind of a mottly green discoloration on your azalea foliage, especially on the bottom of the plants, you have azalea lace bugs. The azalea lace bug gets on azaleas. The lantana lace bug gets on lantanas. The pyracantha lace bug gets on pyracanthus. And the sycamore lace bug gets on sycamores. And then as far as a lace wing has more, both lace wings and lace bugs have pretty clear wings on them. Lace wings have more of a green body, whereas lace bugs have more of a green or tan body. I'm not enough of an entomologist to help you much beyond there.
Full-grown lace wings about the size of your thumbnail.
Yes, they can get some size to them. And both of those are visible. You can see lace bugs too, very easily, you know, especially the adults. You know, phytotoxicity, plant injury due to a chemical pesticide application. Herbicides are usually a primary cause of a non-target plant injury. You know, like trees being damaged by lawn herbicides is very common, so be aware of that. Parasitic wasp. Some of your, I think that's a lace bug larva, the one kind.
Lady beetle.
Lady beetle larva.
Well, he's eating one of the aphids there. Got an aphid in his mouth.
Oh, I see the aphid now. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. We took one for the team there and got us our continuing education on the pesticide stuff, okay? Okay, black spot. Who has a problem with black spot? That's a stupid question. Okay, so there's 12, I think the plant pathologists say there's 11 or 12 or 13 races of black spot now. So different types of black spot. Not every fungicide kills every race of black spot. And down here in the south, we have 3 or 4 races of black spot, but another part of the country may have these other races of black spot. So, you know, I don't think California has any black spot, but Ohio black spot may not be the same black spot as Texas black spot. Y'all understand what I'm saying, or y'all are totally confused now?
How does California get by with no black spot?
The climate, you know. It may be there, but the climate's not conducive. They need fire ants and they need black spot.
Maybe we should negotiate a trade of some sort.
We have plenty of stuff we could trade for.
Yeah.
Alan, before you get too far, you just mentioned something about June bugs. That would be absolutely innovative.
June bugs, okay, June bugs. May beetles, June bugs. Does it seem like they're worse every year?
Yeah, much worse this year.
Much worse this year? And I don't know whether it was a cooler spring, but it seemed like they hung around longer. Now, we have been hot and dry the last 4 to 6 weeks, but before that, we were wet and we were cool. I don't have a lot of helpful information on that. Bifenthrin is one good product for beetles. And I'm sure there's several other ones.
Dr. Owens,
Yes.
beneficial nematode applied in the spring
Ben-
will greatly reduce June bug population.
Okay. Right. And keep in mind beetles are larvae in the soil, you know, so That's where they come from. So anyway, just keep in mind that there are different races of black spot now. Rose is moving all over the country, also spreads black spot all across the country, and you may have different races due to that. Okay, now black spot on roses may look a little bit different depending on the degree of the susceptibility of that rose to black spot. So sometimes people would not necessarily recognize this as black spot, but this rose has some tolerance to black spot. So it doesn't look exactly like classic black spot would look. The description on this is general with light netting, okay? Here's moderate black spot, and here's your yellow halo around it and a really good spot there. And here is where we get excited, okay? And then here's more degree of susceptibility. And of course, fallen foliage in your landscape beds underneath your plants, that's going to serve as an inoculum to just come on back on your plants as soon as the environmental conditions are right for the black spot to start reproducing again. So you really need to make sure you control black spot early in the year, because if you let the black spot get ahead of you, it's going to be hard to get a control on. Okay, does not survive in soil for long periods. The conidia can stay on your tools for 3 to 4 weeks or so. Black spot fungus does overwinter in fallen leaves and infected canes. And this is where down south, we have a lot of issues with this. So that's why sanitation in the bed, new mulch, spraying your mulch with mancozeb or something like that will help to kill some of that fungus that's overwintering. Black spot infection pathway starts at the base of the plant and works its way upward, and by the end of the season you could be defoliated from the top all the way down. When you're now I'm not sure if all y'all prune your roses in late summer or whether you don't, but sometimes when I prune roses in late summer, some roses I prune don't have hardly any foliage on them, or if you shake the plant, there's not going to be any foliage left by the time it all falls off. But we are finding out what rose varieties are more resistant, less susceptible to black spot and Cercospora. Okay, so what do we want to do culture-wise? We want to prune properly, take out canes. Your black spot can be on your canes in addition to your foliage. You want to destroy all this fallen leaf debris. You want to take care of your infected mulch during the winter time, clean it up, remove it, put new mulch out. Don't be composting these things, get rid of it. And let's see, what does this say here? Population, size, time. So you see, in a very short period of time, you can go from just barely moving ahead to letting your black spot totally get away from you. So very important to not let that happen. So if you let black spot keep on going, of course, the foliage is going to be unattractive. You're going to have bloom quality issues. The plant every year is going to get weaker. So after 3 or 4 years, there's not going to be any way to kind of reinvigorate the plant, and it's never going to be as good as it once was. Black spot infects all roses. We may say a rose is resistant, but it's not really resistant, it's just less susceptible, okay? And knockout roses, although some people say black spot doesn't get on knockout roses, of course black spot gets on knockout roses. Whoops, okay. I thought I had something else. But anyway, and then of course, the amount of time foliage stays wet. We want to not increase the amount of time foliage stays wet, because that will increase your black spot incidence. So you don't want to be watering at 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't want to be watering at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You want to water early in the morning. I tell people you need to irrigate at 4 a.m. 4 a.m., really, that's when you're supposed to be irrigating. 4 to 6 a.m. in the morning is the best time to water, because your plant is already wet with dew. You're not increasing the amount of the time of leaf wetness. So you really need to get out there and wake up at 3:30ish or so, get your donuts and a coffee, and go water. Okay. What about taking your hose out there in the middle of the day and just sprinkling your plants to cool them off? That's the worst thing you can do to spread disease. You know, it really is. Who's got some questions? Yes, sir.
In watering, is it, I just put water on the ground, I keep it off the leaves, is that better than?
Yes, sir. Water, when we're irrigating, we want to put water on the soil and not on the plant. So whether it be a soaker hose or a spray stake that just covers the top of the mulch, exactly, yes. Some kind of microsystem that waters just the soil area and not the plant. Yes, sir, Master.
I just want to mention that with the road show coming up, now is the time to cut your plant, because we've got just about enough weeks between now and the show day.
Yes. Gotcha.
How much?
Dr. Owens, when is the time if somebody's gonna spray a herbicide or fungicide or pesticide? At what point in the process are they more likely than not to get exposed?
Okay, so when somebody is going to spray or apply an insecticide or fungicide or herbicide, when are they most likely to get exposed? I would say probably when they're mixing it up, or when that's what I would think.
You have any tips for how to minimize the potential of that exposure? Besides not doing it with your flip-flops on?
You know, how do we minimize exposure? We want to be adding the water to the spray tank at a low rate. We don't want to be going all out. We want to be careful when we're pouring the product out of the container into your measuring cup and putting it in the spray tank. We want to not be talking on the cell phone while we're doing this. Somebody else. Stand upwind. Okay, if the wind is blowing 7 miles per hour or more, we do not spray. 7 miles per hour.
And that's not much.
That's not much. Okay, so wind, drift. The main cause of drift of pesticide is wind. Okay, and also there's different droplet sizes that come out of your spray tank, you know. So a small drop flies further than a big drop does. So we need to pay attention to what kind of what kind of nozzle we have in our spray tank. And 7 miles per hour is the researched mile per hour on wind that has been shown to cause drift potential.
Do you have any rules of thumb tell when 7 miles per hour?
Wind is 7 miles per hour wind occurring.
I usually
At o'clock.
pick up the
I think about the golf course. You know. Okay. No, I don't know. Y'all play golf? Y'all pick up grass and throw it up to see what the wind's doing? Okay.
I'd say if we weren't sure, that's too big.
Right. I mean, if you see the trees moving, definitely it's too much. But you know, like Gay or somebody said, 7 miles per hour is you know, That's low wind. Yeah.
Very early in the morning.
Early in the morning, it's not gonna be windy, and that's when we should be spraying a lot of times anyway. Okay, everybody, well, I know this was not the most exciting topic tonight, but I hope you all enjoyed it and got a little bit out of it. I enjoyed coming to Houston and seeing everybody, and hope y'all will have me back. Thank you.